Executive Director of the Bayfield Chamber and Visitor Bureau. Thank you all so much for coming tonight. We are very lucky to have this in our backyard. It is just, I'm not a huge wine drinker myself, but tons of people come into our center, our visitor center in Bayfield, and I'm sure in Ashland go. They want to tour wineries. They want to visit a winery. It's a, I wouldn't say a trend, but something that we see across the nation in the tourism industry. And we are just incredibly lucky to have these three businesses in our backyard. So, John Hamilton, White Winter Winery, Renata Hauser, Bayfield Winery, and Caitlin Hauser with All Sisters Winery. So, and we picked them because they have three distinctly different products. So we thought it'd be nice to have them get together and tell us why they picked what they picked and how they came about doing it. So I'm going to start with John. I understand the consensus at the table is John should speak first. So do you want to kind of tell about yourself, John, and how you started, and when and why, and all that fun stuff?
Sure. Well, we specialize in making mead, and we're located in Iron River, Wisconsin. And for those of you who don't know what mead is, it's actually the oldest unknown fermented beverage in the world, and it's made from honey as the base fermentable sugar. The reason a lot of people say, well, why in the world did you do that if nobody knows what it is? Well, honey's been in my family background for generations, and that's kind of where the honey connection comes in. And I used to keep bees years ago. I don't anymore because I don't have any time, but I'm still elbow deep, if not deeper, in honey on most days, which is a great thing. Let's see what else. We've been in business now almost 20 years, 19 and a half years this year. So we'll be sure and come out and celebrate our 20th anniversary next year. In 2016, we'll be celebrating all year long. So.
Renata, you want to introduce yourself next and talk about your business?
I'm Renata Hauser. I'm in Bayfield Winery with my husband Scott. We've been in business actually 20 years this year. We incorporated in July of 1995. We put our first tanks of cider in the fall of '95, but we started the farm because Scott's mom had this little jam kitchen, and it was a pay-as-you-go box kind of thing. Nobody was in the store, so we were just selling things. And we realized Bayfield has tons and tons of people that show up every year, and they never actually make it out to the farms. And all these little farms, they all have little farm stores where, the mom or grandma or whatever makes jams or jellies, or they have little gift items, something. But we thought, why don't we try and see if we can get some attraction or something that we could get people to come from town out to the farms. And we picked up that idea because my family is actually from Traverse City, Michigan, and it's a big wine area right now, and that's what they did. All these little cherry farms all turned into these wineries, and they have vineyards everywhere, and they attract thousands and thousands of tourists every year. And so we thought, well, why don't we try that and see if we can generate a little more business and get some people up out of downtown Bayfield and out to the farms. So that was really the impetus for starting that. But also, we had access to apples, so we made apple cider wine, and that's how we started. We had a dry and a semi-dry and a sweet, and they were all apple, and it was fun and challenging and expensive.
Well, I'm Caitlin Hauser, co-owner and president of All Sisters Winery. The first question most people ask is, who are the sisters? We are a mother-daughter-owned winery, but all of the women in my life, I feel, are my sisters. I think all the women I meet, we're all connected, we're all sisters. Mom's my sister, and my mom, and my best friend, so it made sense that we'd go into business together. I also grew up watching both of my parents in the winery, so I grew the passion for the wine, kind of forcibly. And I decided that since, the two veteran winemakers were both doing their thing, I wanted to do my own thing. And I decided that I wanted to support the local grape growers of Wisconsin. So all of my wines are made from Wisconsin-grown grapes. And I have both reds and whites and dry and sweet, everything. And I guess when I started the winery when I was 19. It's a great thing about Wisconsin. You can be 18 and start a winery if you want to. You just can't drink your wine. And let's see, I was in my college apartment in Madison. Not sure if I was going to get a job after college. And it was that uncertainty that said, okay, well, if my parents can start with basically nothing and build this business, why can't I do that? So I started filling out paperwork while I should have been doing homework, and that was my last semester at UW-Madison. And since then, I've been doing business stuff.
So I put your slideshow up behind you. You want to talk about some of these pictures?
Yeah,
Let's do that. Who's this couple here?
So my mother and I are dorks. This field is where our grapes are going to be going in, which is one of our awesome adventures that we're going to be partaking in. But this is actually one of our labels. On my wine, you can see there's a little picture here on our rowdy girl. This is us getting rowdy. My winery is located on the historic Betzold Farm. It was and is preserved forever as the Betzold Orchard. It's in the Land Conservancy, so all of our 100 and some, well, most of our acreage, 100 and some acres, is going to stay green space forever. And that's something we're passionate about. And these are actually the Betzold sisters. One of their daughters got married on the farm last summer, and so I wanted to share their history. These are some of my wines and the labels.
How many kinds of wines do you make? What varieties?
Right now I can sell 9, but I have a couple new ones that are coming out as soon as I get some labels approved and printed. This is the farmhouse that I sell wine out of. You can see how much fun we have. Please come visit. This is me with a group of sisters and a gentleman who is not a sister, but he's a mister, you know. This is the view from our deck. You can see these are apple orchards right here, but the grapevines will be going in the same line, but in the empty page. Another view from the farm, and us being rowdy again.
Thank you, Caitlin. Renata, do you want to do your slideshow now?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Mine is just pictures and kind of history of how we all started. This is the historic barn at Hauser Superior View Farm. It was built in 1928, and they brought it up from downtown. They came on the train and they brought it up with horse and buggy and they put it all together. It's a Sears and Roebuck's barn, but that's where the tasting room is, and it's been there for a number of years. That's the view from the barn. It's kind of hazy. Normally on a really nice day, you can actually see the Kewaunee Peninsula in Michigan. And that is where we started, in this old milk barn, and we had to reconstruct the inside and get it all set up for us and haul in our milk tanks, because that's what we started in. And I think they're tearing the building down in the next year or so. We were surprised actually that it was still standing, because it was in pretty bad shape. And that's one of our old milk tanks. We still use it on occasion, just for fermentation. It doesn't seal up really, really well, so we don't want to store any wine in there. But that's one of the old milk tanks that we have.
Was Hauser's a dairy farm at one point, and that equipment was there, or did you get this from?
We got it from somewhere else. And when we started the winery, we didn't really mention this, but we actually lived in Milwaukee, and we worked full-time jobs, and we would travel on the weekends or Friday night, and we would drive the 7 hours from Milwaukee to come up and work, and then we would turn around on Sunday afternoon and go back and go to work on Monday again. So that was 1995, and this is 2015, and we're still in the historic barn. We still have a view, hazy. But I built a new building in 2008. I was punching through the floor with a forklift in the old building, and so that got to be a little challenging. So I built a new building, and realized afterwards that was getting a little small, but these are the tanks that we're using now. They're polyethylene, and they were actually a temporary fix in 2002, and they worked really well for us, so we continue to use them. And my short-term storage for some tanks, you can see in the background I have the bottling equipment. As things get bigger, bottling equipment is exponentially more expensive than what you would start out with. So right now my capsular labeler, which is the thing in the back that has the flat sheet, the capsular doesn't really work, and the labeler part is working because we have a screwdriver stuck in a capacitor. So I ran out of floor space, and pallet racking is a very handy thing. And we kind of went up, and so I had to get a new forklift that would actually go, an inside forklift that I could use to stack that. So that's fun, but that's not a good forklift to take things off trucks. I have to get my big Yardie out for that one. And this is the next generation. This is Ian out pruning their table grapes, but we were out pruning vines this morning, so this is the next generation who will be taking over the winery. So, Navy kid.
And how many varieties do you currently produce of products, different kinds of ones?
I have 12.
Of,
They're mostly apple-based, but there's other fruit. And I do have one strawberry rhubarb that doesn't have any apple in it. But it's all fruit that you get around. So anything with sugar will ferment, so that's me. Just ferment it and see what happens.
all right, thank you. John, how many different kinds of meads are you producing, and do you have any other new products on the way yourself?
Well, funny you should mention that.
It is funny.
Yeah, we probably do about 14 or 16 different styles of mead. We do our quenches, which are more like a wine cooler style, which is made from the secondary fermentation of the fruit that we use for the mead products. We do a hard cider or perry when we can get the pears. Brackets that we make with cooperation of South Shore Brewery, which are a malted mead beverage. And we just started distilling here maybe like a year ago or so. I guess we had our first distilled product out end of July this last year in 2014.
Is that a brandy?
For all intents and purposes, yes, it's a brandy, but according to the federal government, it is not a brandy. So, because they don't recognize honey as a fermentable, distillable agricultural product yet. So it's been kind of the interesting thing about our business is that when we first started, we were one of about 23 meaderies across the entire United States. We were the only one specializing in mead entirely in Wisconsin. There was one other, Spurgeon Vineyards, that made a mead kind of as an aside, but we were the only ones that specialized in it. And so what we found over the years is that we've really been pushing the envelope with this particular product category, and the distillation has been no different. It's been quite a challenge with labeling and recipe approvals with the federal government. So when Caitlin mentioned the paperwork that goes along with this, it's an unbelievable amount of paperwork that goes along with it. I thought, I'm a psychotherapist actually by training, and I thought psychotherapy had a lot of paperwork and documentation. It's nothing compared to this. Alcohol is probably one of the most regulated industries in the United States right now, aside from nuclear stuff. And sometimes I think it's easier to ship nuclear waste across the country than it is to ship a bottle of wine across the country.
Well, you need a degree in psychotherapy to understand that if I heard you right, the oldest known fermentable product is not recognized by the federal government as a fermentable product?
Yeah, something
Okay,
like that.
just checking.
Yeah. It gives me a real edge over the tasting bar too.
Well, that's a question we have here on the list is the regulations themselves and how that affects your daily business. And, even when we started putting this event together, we reached out, like we always do, to the panel and said, do you want to donate some product? And we found out, well, that's not legal. What are some other legal issues, that and anyone can chime in here, that you have found really problematic or,
Well, we do tastings all across the state, and now in 2008, which one of our cohorts deemed the year of great sadness, we lost our ability to sell directly to liquor stores and restaurants and other permit holders. So now in the state of Wisconsin, you either have to go through a distributor or you have to join a co-op, a winery co-op, which I think you guys do, right? Yeah. And I go through a distributor. So any wine festivals or beer tastings that we have to do, we used to be able to just go and then we'd invoice them or we could donate the product. Well, you can't do that anymore. All that, there has to be a chain of custody, so to speak, a chain of invoicing that goes from the distributor through to the event holder, and we can't touch that or have anything to do with that, which is really awkward when you're trying to do, especially some of the smaller local tastings, which would be really fun to do, but it gets really awkward.
Well, being a member of the winery, one of the winery co-ops in the state, one of the issues that we have that's come up is in the law, it states that you can either be in a cooperative or a distributorship. And one of the things that is just now starting to come up, what if, and now to be in the co-op, I understand, to be in the co-op, the state has to designate you as a small winery. And they do that every year based on your previous year's bottling, because we have to, every month we got to report, what went in, what went out, blah, blah, blah. Not fun. Oh, and I'm an accountant by trade, so that stuff doesn't really bother me. It's just annoying.
Bothers me.
But one of the challenges that we have is that once you hit this certain threshold in gallons, you are no longer considered a small winery. So and there's no provision in the law to transition you from being in the co-op to getting a distributorship, because you either are in it or you're not. So there's no and where you could maybe have a transition period, 1 year saying, okay, I'm moving out of the co-op and into a distributor. There's no provision in the law for that at all. And so we're trying to work on getting that and to change it to say you can either have, we're going to put the and in instead of or. Now can you have multiple distributors if you want?
So are you all familiar with the distribution network in the state of Wisconsin, the three-tier system? The three-tier system says that a manufacturer has to sell to a distributor, who then has to sell to a retailer. And that was put into place after Prohibition. And it was a way to keep an arm's length from the manufacturer through to the retailer, because there were a lot of strong-arm tactics that were put into place by the big beer distributors primarily at the time, and I mean, really violent strong-arm tactics. So it was their way of saying, okay, no, you can only sell to a distributor, Mr. Manufacturer, you can't, sorry, or Ms. Manufacturer, you can't sell directly to the retailer. So this was it was a real privilege for us to be able to do that, but it also meant that the distributors, as the wine industry started to grow, and they saw the writing on the wall, and there's a whole history of this with a Supreme Court lawsuit that happened in 2005, I think it was. So the law changed. We can only go through a distributor or the co-op in order to make it legal and binding for everybody. So, but what happened with the co-ops is, since it says or, you can go through a distributor or the co-op. You can't go through the distributor and the co-op. It set up a 4-tier system for wineries that were in the cooperative. So they can sell to the cooperative, but then the cooperative has to sell to a distributor. So it sets up an extra tier in there, which is completely crazy.
And not fair to the small wineries, because we don't have a lot of margin.
Yeah, it's really, it's really goofy the way the whole thing is set up. But so in 2008, the year of great sadness, this whole thing started probably, maybe 2 years before 2008, where the distributors started putting in more and more money. They put in about $1.5 million to try and get this law changed, so that all of the stuff had to go through the distributors. So it's basically, and this is where I get on my soapbox. I apologize for distributors who are in here that had nothing to do with this at all, but it's kind of, it was our little deal, our little measly. We raised about $25,000 to try and fight this thing against the $1.5 million with the distributor mafioso, as I call them. It's basically 3 very large distributors that are in the state of Wisconsin and actually in a national level that pushed this legislation through. And it was, Renata and I were both on the Winery Association board during this whole time, so we were up to our eyeballs in this stuff, so it was a very painful experience, but a real learning process.
So I'm in the co-op, and it is, I'm a small winery. I'm not worried yet about being large enough to worry about being on the cusp. But one of the things I do have to worry about is the people that want my wine but are too far in distance. I have to do all of the selling, distributing, and I do all the work, the man work, and take it to the store. And then the co-op takes out the fees that they need to take out, they get paid. But so if, say, someone in Milwaukee a store wanted to buy a case of wine to try to sell, I'm not going to drive 14 hours to drop off 1 case of wine to a store. So really, all of my product is super local. I go as far as Superior, and that's because I have to go to the mall in Duluth sometimes just to get my mall fix.
So speaking of local, good segue, how much do you guys rely on local fruit producers? You referenced them earlier. So you all partner with our local fruit producers. Can you talk about that a little?
Sure, that's how we built our business. That was the cornerstone foundation of where we started. People like Rick and Janet Dale up at Highland Valley Farm, very strong partners with blueberries and black currants. When I started, we didn't have a clue as to where to go with this, and Rick was kind enough to actually donate several hundred pounds of blueberries for different products that we worked on, and it's been really a great thing. Erickson's Orchard, we buy gallons and gallons and gallons of cider from them. Strawberries, raspberries if we can get them. The problem for us now is that it's getting harder and harder to meet our need locally, so we're having to branch out and buy stuff on the open market as well, in the larger region.
I use a lot of the same local farms to get product. I get blueberries and black currants again from Highland Valley Farms. I get strawberries from Erickson's, but I also use their picking crew and their cider press, because the apple orchard that was in the background at 20 acres, that's my apple orchard. And so they come in, and after everybody's done picking, because I press everything that's on there, I don't grade any of it, nothing, I don't sell fresh apples, everything, Portland's this big, whatever, they all go in the wine. And so they just pick, it's 2 days to pick the orchard, and then they press the wine, and we just run tote after tote after tote, and I pump it into my tanks to begin fermentation. So I use them for that. I get blackberries and raspberries from Hauser's farm when I can get them, and again, I have to go on the open market as well if I really need to. And then obviously apples I get from the farm.
Right now, I have two major partners with Wisconsin grape growers. They're in the southern part of the state, but the Wisconsin Grape Growers Association is a great tool for me because there's a bunch of grape growers that don't use their products. They're just growing it for people like myself who need to buy the grapes to make their product. So my livelihood is very dependent on my contact with my grape growers.
So Caitlin, you spoke of your market really being local due to your co-op constrictions or restrictions.
Yes.
Do you guys want to speak what your target markets are? I mean, is it Chicago, Madison, Twin Cities? I mean, how do you pick your market area, your target areas, and what are they?
Well, I'll just say about 90% of my sales come from my tasting room in Bayfield, so it's all tourists. Majority, anyway. I'm trying to get my local market to come see me some more. It's a free tasting for locals. But the majority of my sales come from my tasting room and from tourists.
Well, because Bayfield is a destination, again, 92% of my sales are out of my tasting room from May 1st to October 31st. And I make all my money in that period of time. And the rest of it is wholesale, but I wholesale, again, locally because being in the co-op, we generate invoices that say it's going to the co-op, even though it's exactly the same as when we could self-distribute. We get calls, or we call our stores, we deliver the wine, we take care of everything. It's just when we hand them the invoice, it doesn't say Bayfield Winery, it says Wisconsin Winery Co-op. And the co-op takes it and they take a fee for accounting services, blah, blah, blah.
And that's really, truly how ridiculous that whole co-op law really is. It's just, I'm not even a part of it, and I just anyway, so we...
John, target market, come on.
Target market, yeah, sorry. Our target market, we sell all across the state of Wisconsin. We have two distributors in Wisconsin. One on the east side that covers all of, all the way from the southern Illinois border all the way up past Green Bay, and then and covers the rest of the state actually too. And then one that covers the southern half of the state, that whole lower third of the state. We also have one in Minnesota, and we just hired a national sales manager that's going to be working with our out-of-state distributors and the one in-state distributor to bring them a little further along, and then we're going to be moving into the 7-state Midwestern region, and from there we'll be branching out to the coast. So that's kind of where we're headed. We sell a lot in the major metropolitan areas. As I said in the beginning, mead has been a relatively unknown fermented beverage, but we've seen some phenomenal growth in the last 3 to 5 years in the mead industry. There's several, one guy that started the same year we did, and one guy that actually used to buy our stuff all the time that are now the 2 biggest meaderies in the United States, and they're doing about $3 million a year, and we figured, well, there's no reason why we can't do that too. We showed them the way, so we're moving on. And there's no reason why we can't do that in Iron River either. And you talk about those stellar views that you guys have, which I can absolutely guarantee no one has a better view of Highway 2 than I do. And we love it when you guys come to visit us. So there's some certificates that are out for some free wine tastings. And if you don't get one of those and you want one, just let me know. I got some extras that I can fill out and give them to you, because we'd love to have you come to the tasting room.
So when you expand, are you going to become your own distributor?
No.
No.
It's it's for us, time-wise, it just doesn't pay for us, like Caitlin was saying, to try and, before the law change, we had a lot of outlets in the Milwaukee, Green Bay, Kenosha area, and it was always a chore. If I was down there, you know, servicing accounts, I wasn't up north making booze, so I would much rather be making the booze instead of selling it, so.
Can't you be a distributor with one client?
Yeah.
So you all have 3 different products, but basically, I mean, can you talk about the process that goes from, how did you put it, Renata? Anything with sugar in it can be fermented? Can you guys talk about that? And you talked a little bit about your new distilled product. Do you guys have other things on the horizon too that you want to talk about? But I'd like to hear a little about the process though. Is it similar for all of you?
Yeah, actually, in mead can be done in several different ways, and some of the folks that have really grown fast have followed more of a beer track, a little lower alcohol content, carbonated. They're running kegs through beer distributors and things like that. Our product tends to be more wine-like or wine-focused, so the process is very similar to making a wine. There's some nuances and different things that we have to address just because of the uniqueness of the honey and some of the fruits that we use, but it's, for all intents and purposes, the same basic process as making wine.
Renata, you want to tell us what that process is? Or Caitlin?
I know, I said she's really good at that.
I bet you all 3 are.
Basically, you start out with your juice. You want to, and it depends. I know John has some things, and then with cider, my pH is usually really good, and I know nobody wants to hear about science. It's chemistry. It's great fun. You put your juice in, you adjust whatever you need to do to get your pH and stuff right, your sugars, so that you know what your alcohol content is going to be at the end. You pick a specific strain of yeast that will produce what you want it to, because you can leave your juice out and wild strains will start to ferment it, and you may not like what you get. But you pick a certain species of yeast and it will ferment what you want it to, and what it does is the yeast goes in there and it goes, ooh, yummy sugar, let me eat this. And what yeast does when it's done eating all the sugar is it gives off carbon dioxide and alcohol. So that's what you get, and you see all the bubbles in there, and then when it's done, they all die and they flocculate down to the bottom, and it's really gross cleaning up tanks when you have to rack off. So that's basically it. It's the same with grape wines. Grape wines can, say you do primary fermentation. If you have red wines, you got to punch down because you ferment them on the skins, and then you just got to keep going with that. Then you can do a secondary fermentation, which is a malolactic fermentation, where you introduce a bacteria in there and it eats all the malic acid. So you end up with just the lactic acid and the tartaric, and it drops the acidity down, so you're not having a real strong acid wine. So basically that's how it works. That's fermentation. I would have said that the yeast burps up carbon dioxide and poofs out ethanol, but that's kind of gross.
So do you have any carbonated products? Carbonated products?
Yes, we do.
And non-alcoholic products?
Yes, we have non-alcoholics too. Our Spritz is a non-alcoholic juice drink that we've been making for quite some time, and actually came out of the basement in the fermentation room from when you mix up the initial ingredients. It's called the must, and we were mixing up this heavy, really rich honey must with all the different fruits in it that were local, and my kids were down there, and they were about, I don't know, 3 and 7 and 10 maybe when we started, 3, something like that. Time goes by. And we'd scoop up cups of that heavy, just delicious liquid, and they just loved it. And we'd always get the people that would come in, mom and dad would come into the tasting bar, and the kids they'd be sampling all the wines, and the kids would put their little chins up on the edge of the counter and say, don't you have anything for me? And it's like, well, no, but we can figure something out. So we came up with the Spritz, and people really like it. It's fun. It's a fun product.
So if you guys ever do like a champagne, Bayfield bubbly, you can use that.
I want to ask John to borrow one of his machines, but once he lets me, maybe, I'm going to be introducing Silly Giggles, which will be our sparkling white wine / champagne style thing, and it's going to be good.
Excellent.
I'm not planning on doing any bubbly.
So, inevitably we ask you guys, how did you start out? What was the funding like? You can speak to that if you wish, but I think what I would like at this point is, knowing what you know, 20 years, you'll be here for 20 years too. Any advice to give anyone on what you would do differently or what you did that was right? I mean, just, anyone who wants to start out either in your business or just in general, producing a local food product for sale.
Run! I'd probably do everything differently because basically we did everything wrong. So, as my wife Kim said, we were just too stupid to quit and too stubborn to quit. We came into this thing on a shoestring. We started the business with $100,000, and our partners at the time, we each pitched in $5,000 of our own money, and that's what we did. And it was horribly undercapitalized, and we paid for it for 20 years. And that's just kind of the reality of it. But that doesn't mean that you can't succeed if you don't have a ton of money. You just got to start small and be very frugal, and move beyond where you're at. So having a vision is essential. Having a plan is essential. Part of our plan was done by Craig Showalter, who's sitting right over there from Business Plans, etc. And thanks, Craig. Really focused us in on some of the Spritz stuff that we started years ago. And having a plan is absolutely essential. Making sure you know what those costs are going to be, what the revenue expectations are going to be. And planning for that best case and worst case scenario, and more planning for the worst case scenario because it's going to happen.
I would have really liked to have known just exactly how much paperwork you have to do and how much time it sucks out of your life. It's ridiculous. I would have really liked to have been prepared for that. Now for other things that you have to deal with too, and this could be for a local business, not necessarily a winery, but you are very highly regulated being in the food processing business because we are considered food processors. And now we are, yes. And DAPCAP, which is Department of Ag, Trade, and Consumer Protection, they come and inspect you, and if you get somebody who doesn't actually understand that the pH in wine is so low that there is no human-borne pathogen that can survive in it. So it's not like beer or milk that you could get salmonella or some evil thing that could make you very sick. Drinking too much wine can make you very sick, but there's nothing in there that would do anything. So those are things that you have to understand, and people that you have to deal with, and you have to start with the federal government in getting your federal permit, and that can take months, took 6 months of working constantly to get the federal permit. The state permit isn't quite as bad. The Department of Revenue is actually very nice to work with. They will answer your questions. They'll send you information. You can ask whatever you want, and they'll just tell you straight up what the answer is. It's nice. On the alcohol side, you have to realize too that not only do you need your federal permit, your state permit, you also have to have a local permit. And if you don't have your local permit, you're not doing any wine tasting at all or any of that kind of stuff. But that doesn't ever happen because they were like, ooh, more money, yay. So that's just stuff to think about. But if you have a food processing plant, if you're gonna do jams or jellies, or if you're gonna serve pies or any of that stuff, just to understand that you're regulated by so many different levels of state and local government. It's just, be prepared for that.
I'll tell you in 15 years. No, you're going to spend all of your time doing what you're going to be doing. If it's what you love, it's great. So I think the three of us are all in the same boat. It's what we love to do, so it's good that we're spending our time doing this instead of being a psychotherapist. Is that what it was? Or an accountant, or wherever I was going to be if I wasn't here. I'm happy doing this. So if it's what you're passionate about, go for it. Just know it's going to be time and money and exhausting.
You're either doing paperwork or you're cleaning.
Definitely cleaning.
90% cleaning.
And truly, and in all honesty, what's really, and I think Renata and Caitlin can speak to this too, what really makes this business fun is our customers. You know, people come in, we meet people from all over the world, and it's really fun when we see local support, to see, you know, how many familiar faces there are here tonight, and thank you so much for coming to listen to us jam around about what we love to do. But the local support that we've had has been phenomenal, you know, from the county, and from our local governments, and our local customers, and all that good stuff, the local growers. It's been really great.
Well, thank you guys. I'd like to